exactly the same. And in fact, they say she.
Good evening, council members.
Hello and good evening.
And here comes our mayor. They were right on time. Mayor Herbig, I'm trying to promote you in Zoom. I think since everyone's streaming in, it's a little bit of a lag. Here you are.
All right, is everybody here? Looks like everybody's here. Are we ready to go, Madam Clerk?
Almost. Let's go ahead and record. Stand by.
Kenmore City Council is now in session. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Present.
Councilmember File.
Present.
Mayor Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Kugler.
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
All right, next on the agenda is the flag salute. If you'd all please join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember Shrubnik. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there's any objection, the agenda will stand approved. Hearing no objection, the agenda stands approved as published. Next on the agenda is public comment. We welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. Please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. Guests must address comments to the mayor and the council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We will not split your time with others or reset your time except by express permission, approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters and council members must limit their communication about such matters. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Madam Clerk, who do we have?
Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to start with the following group of guests. Tracy Benishinsky, followed by Dakota Rash and Angie Gerard and Matthew Halls. Tracy, are you with us?
I am.
Let us get the timer going. Stand by.
Here I am.
Oh, how long? How long?
Three minutes in.
Okay, let's go.
Do you have the timer?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Tracy Benishinsky, Kenmore. I am very pleased that there are 2 environment and climate items on the agenda tonight. First, the climate action plan. City staff have done a great job on the CAP. I appreciate all the hard work I know went into it. My hope is that it really will be, as stated, a living document, a good baseline from which to build even more aggressive targets and actions, and that our progress will be evaluated on a rolling basis, much more than every 2 years. My deepest hope is that this will not be a document to point to say, look, we're doing something. And you can comment on it again for actionable change in a year when it's a good start, but we really need to be doing so much more. For example, I think that we can and should get to net zero as a city well before 2050. 2035 seems an achievable target, and sooner would be even better. So let's put 2035 in writing to motivate ourselves to get there. In order to do the more aggressive climate work necessary to decarbonize and move toward a net gain of ecological function for our natural environment, both of which Kenmore should do, I support the addition of staff to the City of Kenmore Environmental Services team. Expecting 1 or 2 staff members to do this most imperative of work part-time is too large a burden for them to carry. They shouldn't have to, and our environment and climate won't wait for fewer staff to do the more work that we need to be doing. We need to move faster against impending climate collapse, and more people working in collaboration will allow the work to be done more quickly. To that end, I support the idea of a community climate committee to cultivate a city community collaboration on climate environment work. Something of this idea is hinted at in the CAP, but I think it needs to be true working together rather than simply keeping the community informed and encouraged. Dakota Rash first brought the idea of a robust, meaningful community climate committee to my attention, and I believe it is worth exploring and implementing as soon as possible. Second, trees. Thank you, Council, for your ongoing support of more protective tree canopy regulations in Kenmore. We continue to lose far too many trees to regulations that favor developers over people and environment. There's a lot more work to be done, but the recommendations before you tonight are a good start. I would ask, however, that black cottonwood and red alder and any other species of alder native to our area not be considered nuisance trees. I understand that many people do not like these trees, but they are native to our region and they do provide invaluable wildlife food and habitat, and they have an important role to play in ecological succession. I would prefer a community education approach where we communicate the role of different trees in different ecosystems, including in our backyards, and encourage the preservation of whatever the preferred species are by other means other than devaluing cottonwood and alder. Further, I am interested in the City of Seattle approach of considering trees like cottonwood and alder exceptional if they are part of a grove. Thank you so much to staff and council for all of your hard work on our behalf. Keep going. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Dakota Rash,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can go ahead.
Great, thank you. Dakota Rash, citizen of Lake Forest Park. I work in Kenmore. Thank you all for the time tonight for public comment. So the Kenmore Climate Action Plan. I want to emphasize and support everything Tracy has just said. Adopt this as a baseline or a truly living document, one that neither hinders future ambitious action nor enables delay through hand-wringing over procedure. Do not let this good become the enemy of a better plan in the future. Keep the good elements of this plan as a great first step and allow yourselves to come back to it or use it as a springboard. I am fully aware of Appendix A discussing oversight, accountability, monitoring, and evaluation. This section actually gives me fairly massive anxiety. Updating the mayor and council once a year does not live up to the scale of the challenge and its necessary response. In an ideal world, there should be monthly updates. Most importantly, City Council should be able to decide to take stronger action at whatever point necessary, not just at these annual updates, as is suggested in the CAP. Overall, I'd like to suggest the creation of a community climate council. The City of Kenmore has citizens and youth who are concerned about the state of the climate and are willing to put significant time and energy into making sure we are heading in the right direction. Staff at Kenmore are skilled and few. We can't assign this massive challenge to a part-time job for a few people. The CAP already mentions engaging the public, but only at public-facing events where people are thinking about other things. Incorporate these passionate individuals, let them put their money where their mouth is and help bring Kenmore to its full potential to be a climate leader. So now I will make some specific comments on specific points of the CAP. We'll see how far I get. Reduction goals are not enough. Net zero by 2050 is the standard for the world, not for developed countries and not for suburbs like Kenmore. The goal should really be something closer to net zero by 2035, and huge cities are already doing things even more ambitious than this. Ithaca, New York has set its net zero goal by 2030, so has San Jose and Ann Arbor. We can do 2035. Municipal operations, we should be aiming to eliminate emissions, not reduce them as the language presents. We should get away from PSE, and this is probably one of the stickiest issues at hand, but through the use of the Community Climate Committee, we need to figure out how to either get away from this fossil fuel corporation or use the city's influence to pressure them to be better actors. And I'll finish up with buildings and energy. Using less energy should not come before using cleaner energy sources. This pushes the false narrative perpetuated by fossil fuel companies that it's up to the individual to reduce their demand on the grid, when what we really need is to generate more electricity from clean sources. We should be using electric and powered by solar wherever we can, And we shouldn't be phasing out fossil fuels in new buildings. Just no more fossil fuels in new buildings. I know we can do this. We're going to be a great example for the rest of the areas surrounding us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dakota Rash. Angie Gerard, followed by Matthew Halls.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Angie Gerald, and I'm a small landlord in Ballard, City of Seattle. My husband and I rent out several well-maintained single-family houses at below market rates, and we're becoming more and more of an anomaly. I'm making public comment in Kenmore because I understand you're considering many of the same tenant protections that have been passed into law in Seattle. Unfortunately, many of these ideas have been passed hastily without accountability for their actual impacts. In the past 5 years or so, Seattle housing providers have had to rapidly adapt to a tsunami of new regulations. This volatile landscape is particularly impactful for small mom and pop landlords who provide some of the most affordable and flexible rental housing. Instead of relieving displacement, inequity, and unaffordability, it's exacerbating them. Due to greatly increased risk and complexity, a lot of people are divesting from small rental property ownership in Seattle at a time when the need for affordable rentals is greater than ever. In 2018, Seattle conducted a first-time rental housing study. UW researchers found that 40% of Seattle landlords were selling or considering selling their rentals, that regulations are exacerbating housing scarcity, particularly for lower income renters, that regulations are leading to fewer housing options, higher rents, and more challenging screening criteria. Unfortunately, our council has done no follow-up outreach or analysis. I encourage Kenmore not to fall into this same echo chamber. The flurry of complicated regulations alongside the lengthy eviction moratorium have treated mom and pop landlords with the same broad brush as large corporations, resulting in a big decrease of rental units registered in Seattle, especially family-sized rentals. We've had a recent loss of almost 5,000 1 to 4 unit properties, and the trend is continuing downward. The situation is increasing barriers to individual ownership, creating advantages for deep-pocketed corporations who can spread risk while raising prices, and deeply limiting opportunity for small-scale or first-time rental property owners. To improve conditions, we really need local legislators who can foster a collaborative relationship with small independent property owners and enable as much viable community-based rental housing as possible. Small landlords are part of the solution in providing diverse, stable, and affordable housing. We need more opportunities for people to rent to people, not just corporations, government, and nonprofits. Seattle's policies are greatly limiting options for regular people to rent out rooms or property to other community members. Don't follow Seattle's lead. Be collaborative, be holistic, be accountable in your rental housing policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gerald. Ed Farrer, followed by Jay Fritz, Jim Howard, and Stacy V.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Ed Farrer. I've been a resident of Kenmore for over 35 years and live in the community of 163rd, and coming back from a short trip, I've noticed the entering and exiting 163rd, going to and from Juanita Drive, the very narrow street that is used to be a little wider than 20 feet. Now it's about 21 feet, and concern is safety, because I've seen, I live close to the corner of that intersection, and I've seen people have to stop and let the other cars go past by before they can enter or exit. It does pose a real safety hazard for people going through there. I understand that the design is to accommodate Americans with disabilities, so they can use the sidewalk. But then again, the width of the street has drastically narrowed, that there's only one car that can enter or exit one at a time. Now that doesn't make sense. That's a very flawed design. I'm not an engineer, but if you ever happen to go through there, and please do visit, because my community here has, I believe, has petitioned the city of Kenmore to revisit what they've done. And then before they pour the second concrete, they need to address that issue. That corner right there is very unsafe. There have been some accidents in the past. In fact, there was a fatality that happened a few years ago where a disabled child was hit by a car. Now, it's a very narrow street. So please, we are looking forward that you address this concern before something, another accident happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jay Fritz.
Hello, I'm Jay Fritz. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My concerns are following along Ed's concerns. It's about safety on Juanita Drive. My concerns has a lot to do with bicyclists. The contractor, when they leave that place on the weekends, there's trash all over. Their signs aren't organized. They are blocking the bicycle lane with their material, sometimes with their equipment. Reading the brochure, I understood that City of Kenmore was going to be, keep the signs up for areas that are closed to bicyclists. I've never seen a closed sign on that bike path. It's not safe for bicycles. It's not safe for pedestrians. I've tried to walk from my house on 153rd up to the trails at St. Edwards, and there's stuff in the way just trying to walk to the trail entrance. And my other concern is the width of these lanes you're putting in there at 9 feet. I think that, I don't know who the engineers are, like Ed was saying, that's designing these narrow lanes, but where you redid 153rd, two buses can't go by at the same time. One bus has to stop to let the other bus go up the hill or down the hill. That's ridiculous, as he said. It's not safe. If I go across the street to check my mailbox, I have to stand in the gutter in the lane of travel to check my mail, and sometimes jump out of the road because vehicles don't want to stop and you can't be there getting your mail, and the lanes are just too narrow. My biggest complaint is the city's control of these contractors, Tomco on Juanita Drive. It's not safe. Their traffic control is pathetic. I don't believe they're following state law. There's taper zones are too short. Their flaggers don't pay attention. They're talking on the phone. I've seen many near accidents on Juanita Drive because of it. The worst section now is the upper section above 153rd where they're working, and there's no bike path on the right anymore. They got steel plates, they got eco blocks in the road, they got track hose in the road, and it's just a really unsafe situation. I think somebody's going to get hurt. I'm sure somebody already has. I just don't know the documentation on it. Anyways, thank you. I think you guys can do better, and I'm pretty sure you will. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Jim Howard, followed by Stacy V.
Council. I'd like to talk a little bit about the two agenda items for the environment, the climate plan and tree protection, which I fully support. But I also like to just express some frustration I've been having over the past year, trying to get city and King County staff to take the maintenance along the Burke-Gilman Trail a little more serious. It has a lot of opportunity for tree planting, which I think everybody agrees is important, but just really not getting much response. And I have copied all of City Council. I think some of my emails have gone to Planning Commission, probably 5 pages of correspondence over the past year. And, I basically explained, I am a landscape architect and willing to volunteer and to help develop organize volunteers to help maintain along the Burke-Gilman Trail. And King County said that couldn't be done. And I offered, there's places that trees can be planted along the Burke-Gilman Trail. And King County said they aren't set up to do that, that it's just for more native type planting. And I also asked about tree grants, if there's any grants available for tree planting in the city. And the King County did have a program, but it's expired. So that kind of ran into a dead end as well. And for the city, I explained I'd be willing to volunteer for a tree to help city staff develop a tree plan where you have all this right of way within the city where their trees can be planted. And it didn't really go anywhere. And then I pointed out a lot of the topping of trees that's going on in the city. Right directly across from City Hall, the Zelkova trees have been topped. And I was told that that doesn't violate city code. So, you know, I'm all for doing more for trees, but I just hope that the city follows through a little bit better in the maintenance. Finally, just a few quick points. I strongly encourage the green factor, similar to what City of Seattle has, to really create strong, healthy landscapes on new developments. And I'd also just hope that the city can improve the maintenance. You know, work with King County. I hopefully we'll talk to them this week and get more feedback on whether they can do anything to improve what's there. But we'll see what kind of response I get. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Matthew Halls, I skipped right over you. My apologies. Stacy Valenzuela, please stand by.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I thought I got skipped for a second there, so thank you. Can you hear me?
We can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, council, for your time tonight. I'm Matt Halls, a resident of Bothell and landlord in Kenmore. First off, I want to thank the council for listening and producing the tenant right FAQ. This FAQ has helped clear up some of the fake news and misinformation that a council member was spreading on Facebook. So I'm glad we got that cleared up. From reading the FAQ, it is clear that no other East Side cities have adopted these provisions, as was my assertion all along. In the upcoming tenant ordinances being proposed, the registry for all landlords is a great addition, and the small landlord group of Kenmore is in favor of it. If I were in charge of changing tenant rights for my city, I would have started with this ordinance. I would have rolled that out first, collected all the data to understand the demographics for the people this is affecting. If this would have been done first, we could have answered questions like, how many rental units do we have in Kenmore? How many of those units are owned by small mom and pop landlords versus corporate landlords? Then with that data, we could have tracked how each of the subsequent changes affected those numbers, and we could have adjusted and responded accordingly. Instead, the council is blindly following the Transit Writers Union agenda manifested through council member Karina File. They have no data to track and measure if these changes are working or not. Instead, they're just doing what Seattle does. And from all the data we have seen to date, those changes in Seattle are not working. There are a decrease of rental units and the rental prices continue to soar. I noticed that in the FAQ, there is nothing regarding the help for small landlords one council member has talked about. The rental insurance can protect landlords. We still haven't seen how that would work. This is more information that one council member is spreading that they should clear up. It's concerning that that person leading the charge for the city council on this particular topic has misspoken time and time again. My opinion is the council should provide an exemption for small landlords for the past tenant modifications, but require the rental registration. That will give us data to start understanding if the changes the council is adopting is helping or hurting the problem. Kenmore City Council has an opportunity to do this right, listening to all their stakeholders and making decisions based on data. Isn't that what you want? Or is it more about getting your picture in the newspaper with a catchy headline? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Stacy V, followed by John Peoples, Patrick O'Brien, Kay Fontaine, and Julian Lowe. Stacy V?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Stacy Valenzuela. I agree with all the people before me that spoke about environment and the engineering of our streets. People love Kenmore because of the open spaces, natural habitat, trees, and wildlife, despite the actions by some that have failed by protecting our city, our resources, and our ordinances. We need the variances and permits with encroachment on protected areas, shorelines, and wetlands, and clear-cutting trees causing concerns denied. We need all the task force and committees to include community members passionate for the cause. We need to stop the cementing of natural habitat and parks, increasing greenhouse gases by 30% and heat in our city. Our natural resources should be protected over recreational activities and development of larger complexes or homes. The Kenmore CAP plan needs to include the industry in the city. We need Kenmore, as well as surrounding cities, comprehensive plans to concentrate on remediation of toxics on MACA sites. We need to include the 1099 protections to close the loophole on our resources, protecting our waterways, air, wetlands, public health from chemical toxins. We need to restore our creeks and natural shoreline. We are still in a pandemic, many struggling to make ends meet. The city already overpaid for property for public works. The legislation released grants for infrastructure. We need your vote to wait until grants are received to build the public works facility that may be needed in 15 years, not bonds putting additional financial burden on residents that didn't support these actions anyway. 3 residential surveys for 2019 still being ignored by staff. The number one, natural habitat and trails. City is cementing parks for a few in a club, a community center. The city built a public boathouse. The public has no access in financial default by a club that has access. Community swimming pool and dog park. City prioritized public works and a playground at cost of millions while supporting dog parks and pools outside of our city. Was this what residents requested? Nowhere on the survey did the residents support a boathouse, our parks to be cemented, a kayak club. The playgrounds and sports fields barely made the list. Again, wasting for a few. Swamp Creek sidewalk plan. We brought forward the oyster shell process that works like cement without harming natural habitat. But again, we are ignored. Why are public comments important even if we're being ignored? Because it's on records with resident voices that lawyers can use to challenge harmful rules. Several of our residents prove passionate and come back week after week to express their concerns for improvement in our city. Why are we, the participants and stakeholders, not being prioritized? Please stay strong to support tenants' protections. Tenants have been held at the mercy of landlords for too many years. Please continue to support our extremely low affordable housing. Please continue to
Thank
listen.
you, Ms.
and
Valenzuela.
support. Thank you for listening to my public comment tonight.
Mr. Peoples?
John Peoples, Kenmore, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Kenmore City Council. Thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. I hope you're all doing well and continue that way on this sunny afternoon. Thank you also for offering the Peace Officers Memorial Day Proclamation. I really do appreciate it. I urge you to visit the Officer Down Memorial page for information about police officers who have sadly died in the line of duty. I also bring you a legitimate grievance and ask you to take a reasonable action to remedy the situation. Please remove the racist propaganda piece called the White Supremacy Pyramid from Kenmore's municipal website. This vile piece does to people exactly what it claims to avoid. There is no justification for this city-sponsored racism which you endorse with your continued inaction. This racist document passes opinion as fact and relies on insinuations to target a whole group of people based solely on the color of their skin and the innocuous words of their allies. Its defense is inherently racist, its creators and defenders racists. Whoever told you this disgusting racist work is okay was lying to you. You have all been played for fools and dupes. There is nothing inclusive about this vile piece. It is inherently racially exclusive. According to the racist creators of this document, and you asking, why can't we all just get along, means you support genocide. Same thing with saying there are two sides to every story. In other words, the city of Kenmore and its contractors support bullies and bullying behavior. By condoning this vile content, you do not represent the good and decent people of Kenmore. The piece unfairly targets people who use reasonable language to contribute to the conversation about race relations and bullies them into staying silent under threat of being deemed evil and dehumanized. If you think this vile racist propaganda is justified, you have been tragically misinformed. You have my sincere sympathies. Only a racist would think this content is okay. I would eagerly discuss this with any of you in person. Anyone with the courage and heart to discuss this, just let me know. We should be back to in-person meetings soon. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples. Patrick
You're
O'Brien?
welcome.
Good evening, Pat O'Brien, Kenmore, City of Kenmore. The tent city issue is still not dead. We did receive a letter from Don Raton, the city attorney, who seems to be working not for the citizens, not for the people that live next to the tent city, but instead for a church that might have 7 people parked at the church on any given weekend. We've asked for this permit to be denied because the 1,000 people or the 1,000 feet that were to of the residents near the tent city, they weren't informed, and we have affidavits, but nobody on the city council seems to care, and they're going to continue on without having a meeting, even with the concerned citizens. We'd like to have a city attorney that actually worked for the citizens of Kenmore. And then when we asked Debra Shrebnick if she got one of these letters and said no, somebody figured out that she was within 1,000 feet. So we got a real problem there. The people that live next door to it, one lady's bedroom is 15 feet from the tent city. I don't think you'd want to sleep all summer long with your bedroom 15 feet from tent city. So think about that. The asphalt plant, there was an ash explosion tonight. They continued to deliver harmful chemicals with chemical trucks at 4:30 in the morning. If you want to do something about your environmental plan, that's the biggest polluter of CO2 and carbon in the area. And while they don't have a current operating license and they're applying for a new one, you could change the zoning if you put your mind to it. I'm sure Mayor Baker or some of the other you could come up with a good strategy to eliminate that plant, because we're not going to have real development. We're not going to have safety. We're not going to have clean air as long as that plant's there. And as far as this sidewalk plan that came out last week, we'd really like to sit down with whoever's designing that and have some community input, especially in front of our houses, about how wide, how many sidewalks, what other amenities are going to be there. Are they going to plant trees that are going to block views? We don't know. Nobody's talked to anybody on the proposed sidewalk side. We just know that there's a 10-foot drop off on the other side and they want to put a sidewalk there. And 3 minutes doesn't seem to quite get it. And I would love it if we did share information. That's not bad. We should share screens. We should have in-person meetings soon. And the firehouse expenditure that you're going to ask for is 6.6 million. We could have had the old fire station for 3 million.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Kay Fontaine, followed by Julian Lowe, Elizabeth Mooney, and Nancy at Glenwood Gardens. Kay, are you with us?
Yes, one moment. Hi, can you see me?
Yes, we see you and hear you. Go ahead.
Very good. City Council, thank you for listening to my comments tonight. I'd like to talk about the tenant protection legislation that is passed and pending. Joe Marshall made comments at the 329 meeting before this first set of regulations were voted on. He said, "We were just made aware of apparently some developments between important stakeholders in the region. Arch and I believe landlords organizations. I think it's well worth the public's interest to see if the stakeholders collaboratively are going to be able to come to to some agreement as to these important provisions. I absolutely applaud the council for looking into these issues, but I think given the challenges, I only see more innovation, more good ideas coming from a collaborative process that can take a bit of time. So I move to table this motion," end quote. Thank you, Joe Marshall, for that comment. In the rush to pass the current legislation, the city council neglected to take stock of information they had about rental units in the city. As a business person, I understand that I serve a customer. I need to know what they want and need. I can't sell a product to someone who can't use it. As a government organization, you need to understand the people you serve, including tenants and landlords. I'd like to point out that one of the pending items you will be voting on is creating a registry of rental units. A number of small landlords I've spoken with think this is a good initiative. It serves many purposes. The city would understand how much rental housing they have, the size, the kind, the location, and who the landlord is. The city would also be able to measure the results of this legislation. How is that possible when you don't have any information right now? Most egregiously, the city hasn't sent out information notifying people that the legislation passed. This presents another trap for landlords that can come back to haunt City Hall in the end. There are also advantages for tenants. For example, you can reach out to some small landlords to see if they would be willing to participate in programs for lower income tenants. In the rush to pass tenant legislation, it seems that a lot of things were missed. Before we go further, I'm challenging all of you, take a second look, think about what we're voting on and really think it through. Many of us, including me, are saddened, I really am, by the problems that people are facing, especially tenants. However, if we want to be successful, we can't just lead with our hearts. We need to be pragmatic and logical to make sure that we're all successful. That means carefully examining the issue. Again, look at include all the stakeholders in the discussion, everybody, landlords, tenants, the community, and don't rush this legislation. We can do better. Let's make this work for everyone.
Thanks, Ms.
Thank you.
Fontaine. Julian Lowe.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Herbig, council members, Julian Lowe, Puget Sound Energy, Local Government Affairs. Last week, you heard from Andy Wappler on the partnership between PSC and Kenmore to improve power reliability. And now I'd like to discuss how we look forward to partnering with the city, its residents and businesses on the climate action plan. In 2021, PSC released our Beyond Net Zero Carbon Pledge, which outlines our roadmap to carbon neutrality for our company operations and electric supply by 2030 and natural gas system by 2045. This roadmap underscores our support and participation in the Clean Energy Transformation Act, Low Carbon Fuel Standard, and the Climate Commitment Act. Furthermore, the Clean Energy Implementation Plan we filed with the UTC earlier this year nearly doubles our short-term clean energy targets. By 2025, 63% of PSC's electricity will be supplied by clean energy sources. Specific to the strategies in the plan, PSC looks forward to working with the city, its residents, and businesses on building a cleaner energy future together. This includes promoting awareness of the Clean Buildings Act through our Clean Building Accelerator, promoting use of PSC's Green Power Program for city operations, residents, and businesses. And PSC definitely looks forward to exploring other options such as demand response, energy efficiency, and other measures for the city's large-scale energy users and all Kenmore customers. Specific to the conversation about electrification, PSC partnered with XIII, a respected energy industry consultancy, to conduct a rigorous analysis on multiple decarbonization pathways, including full electrification and hybrid electrification. Through this study, PSC concluded we can reduce our carbon emissions faster at a lower cost and without compromising electric reliability through a hybrid approach that combines targeted electrification with leveraging the pipeline delivery system. Last year, the state legislature funded the UTC to undertake an examination of gas decarbonization and the best way to move forward, and the results are expected in 2023. On the issue of equity, we recognize that equity is an important part of the CAP, and it is a significant part of our clean energy implementation plan as well. And we thank the Equity Advisory Group that we've stood up, which is a cross-section of our customers, in helping us think through clean electricity, its transition, and the impacts it'll have on highly impacted communities. No one should be cost burdened, displaced, or harmed as we all transition to clean energy. Thank you again, Council, for this opportunity. I look forward to working with the Council and staff. Really want to thank Richard and Sammy for all their great work. And again, look forward to working with the residents and businesses on implementing this climate action plan, and look forward to that meeting soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian Lowe. Elizabeth Mooney, followed by Nancy at Glenwood Gardens and Victoria Grayland. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you, Anastasia. I had to slip out of a phone and into the computer. Thank you. I'm actually a little bit shocked. Oh, Elizabeth Mooney, resident of Kenmore. I'm a little shocked to hear Puget Sound Energy talking. That is not what I'm for. I think that Kenmore can do a lot better. And I think that we should all be at that meeting with Puget Sound Energy and people like Dakota Rash and Tracy Bonazinski. And I'm sure Vicki Grayland would be a good person to be there. I think we can do a lot better from what I'm learning from some of those folks. And one thing, just because I'm kind of shocked about that last comment, we've got a drastic situation happening and we need to depend on the city doing their best, like getting electric vehicles. I think we should wait and slow down till people can all give their opinions and get back to City Hall and be in person. And in fact, that's kind of what I was going to say, is that I think it would be great if you all could put a moratorium on all major decisions, including developments, until we can get a much better idea of what we citizens and our staff and council want to do as stewards of our streams and wetlands in Kenmore. I was going to say, you know, since we incorporated and PERC formed, there's a lot more gray than green in Kenmore. That is not something to be proud of. If you look at Google Maps, you'll see a lot more gray than when we were first here, trying to protect our streams, our riparian zones, our wetlands. Marilyn Knutson highlighted that the comprehensive plan has a bike trail going right through the giant Swamp Creek wetlands. I mean, we need to slow down. And what I would like to propose, having talked to some of these people, is that instead of zoning based upon our blocks and our transportation busing, that we customize Kenmore, because we are so special in that we are the stewards of these streams and wetlands at the base of all of this flooding that comes from north and east of us. And we have a responsibility, I believe, and a joy that we can be the best in the block with climate action, starting right here, incentivizing solar panels, you know, doing things that after we get that straight, we get our environmental laws back into place to at least be as good at protecting trees like Jim Howard was talking about, then start talking about your missing middle. Okay, just wait until you get what we need before anything else happens, and we protect our streams, our wetlands, our heron habitat, our wetlands, because you know what? If you destroy the wetlands, we also flood. So then we waste our money. So start with the environment, start with the climate action being a lot stricter, and let's get our community get together at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. Nancy?
Hi, I'm here. I don't see me. Just a minute.
We see and hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, you do. Okay. This is for the Planning Commission, and I was told I could bring it here tonight because I can't go to their meeting tomorrow. On the missing middle, the issue of adding new units to existing single-family homes, I don't think enough thought and evaluation has happened so far on this. It's obvious more trees would have to be taken down to accommodate building, and we're already losing trees as it is. Many of these would be older conifers that take years and years to grow also. This plan would also increase water loss in wetlands and streams that's already going at a rapid pace. So instead of going ahead with the knowledge that we'll be losing valuable natural resources that can't be retrieved once they're gone, I think we need to go back and use planning suggestions given by strong towns. They came here with a Kenmore, focused on Kenmore. And in 2021, Joe Minikazi said the way to get an idea of critical areas that need protection is to overlay that map, the critical areas map, onto a city map with all present buildings. And I was wondering if this has ever been done in Kenmore yet. And related to the program geared to Kenmore that Joe did, I noticed one thing that we have a lot of, and one thing that we have none of. And there's a vast difference in taxes between the two. And I was wondering if that had gone into consideration. The first is residences for single families. We have 55% of that. The other is tall buildings with mixed use. We have none of those. The difference in the taxes that come from each is for single family, the city receives $5.50 per acre, but for mixed use, it could go from 95 to 280 per acre at least, depending on the height of the building. Those dollar figures come from San Francisco for 2021. So I would like to see more long-term planning, and I totally agree with Elizabeth Mooney on her comments. They fit right with what I'm saying here. And I also have one that I will talk about on the, I guess the total pipeline. I can say a little bit on the sidewalks. I totally disagree with cement sidewalks on the Tolt River pipeline going through Swamp Creek. The, elevated boards are what I've always seen used on wetlands, nothing else in a place that you want to protect the wetlands from foot traffic. So let's see, it was Marilyn Knutson who described routes that could be used, bike routes on the roads that could be used without going through that. And I guess to do something different, leave it alone, would be following Kenmore Critical Areas Plan for Best Science as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Victoria Grayland?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to comment on Julian Lowe. You know, PSC supporting this, support it in a real way. Give higher rebates to citizens. The last time I checked your rebates, they were $500 or less on a $20,000 expenditure. It's not that inspiring. It's not really that sincere for him to say how totally PSC supports all this retooling of a house. I also support what Tracy B. and Dakota Rash had to say in their comments. I was delighted with their idea of a Citizens Climate Committee. If you're honest, you know that citizens have been the source of most of the good environmental ideas in Kenmore, as it should be. There is a strong and responsible environmental community in Kenmore, and please take advantage of our intelligence and creativity. In the spirit of transparency, I'd like to acknowledge the meeting between environmental staff and the Cascadia rep and members of People for Climate Action, myself and Stacy Valenzuela, who also I support her comments as well. When I brought up the pie chart on greenhouse gases, and I call it a guess, the Cascadia rep was maybe angry, maybe offended. She made the case that it was based on formulas, very scientific formulas that come from the federal government. And I'm old enough, I told them, I'm old enough to remember thalidomide, which was also approved by the federal government. And I also remember the Vietnam War and the Iraq War, which of course were based on lies by the federal government. And I might agree this in journalism from the time of Watergate, which we don't even have to talk about that. My idea is to question everything, especially if it comes from the federal government. And I question how our city government is run. I thought a city council measure unanimously passed should be followed. Why did it take city staff 2.5 years to follow the city council measure? Why? Probably because, in my opinion, the staff follows the city manager, not the city council. To quote the great Mel Brooks, it's good to be king. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grayland. Mayor Herberg, I don't see any additional hands at the moment.
Okay. Next up, we have 3 proclamations tonight. The first is for Peace Officers Memorial Day. Whereas the first Peace Officers Memorial Day was recognized in 1963, several months after President John F. Kennedy signed the bill into law in October 1962. And whereas it is important that all residents know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agencies, and that police officers recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting against violence and disorder, supporting the building blocks of strong communities, and promoting peace. And whereas we recognize that peace officers are frequently exposed to chaos, fatality, and sometimes mortal danger. And whereas peace officer deaths in 2000 2021 resulting from felonious acts increased by more than 58% from the year prior. And whereas for officers who've been injured or have fallen in the line of duty, their families and their legacies are forever changed by the trauma and loss. And whereas the city of Kenmore is proud of the exceptional presence, service, and contributions of the 12 police officers serving as residents, now therefore I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the city of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day throughout the city of Kenmore. We call upon our community to join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to our beautiful and safe Kenmore. And here to accept that is Brian Johnson, Executive Director of Behind the Badge Foundation. Mr. Johnson, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you so very much for the invitation tonight. I'd like to thank both you and Council for your leadership in this and the recognition of our law enforcement officers who are currently serving, as well as those who have been lost in the line of duty. As I traveled across the state today, my organization, prior to this, I was a police officer for 36 years in Monroe. I was in Eastern Washington in support of an agency who was recognizing one of their officers from 13 years ago. But my colleague today is in Washington, D.C. with 60 family members from the 7 line of duty deaths that are being recognized at our National Law Enforcement Memorial. And one of those was Reggie Thomas from King County Sheriff's Office from 2020, and another from Lexi Harris, who was lost last June, almost a year ago, in Seattle Police Department. And so on behalf of all of our law enforcement officers, those who reside in your city, those who commute through your city, and those who work for your city, and all of us, I would like to thank you so very much for this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Next on the agenda is Safe Boating and Paddling Week. Whereas on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., with the vast majority of those accidents caused by human error and poor judgment, and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today if they'd worn their life jackets. And whereas the city of Kenmore is bound by 7.8 miles of shoreline along Lake Washington, the Sammamish River, and Swamp Creek, and whereas a large number of Kenmore's residents of all ages engage in recreational boating, and whereas the mission of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary is to promote and improve recreational boating safety by teaching boating safety courses and conducting vessel safety checks. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 21st through the 27th as Kenmore Safe Boating and Paddling Week, and encourage all Kenmore residents to dedicate themselves to learning about the practice and practicing safe boating, including wearing life jackets. And here to accept that is Debra Alderman, U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, and Steve Holmes of WhatsSup Rentals.
Hi, I'm Debra Alderman, and Mayor Herbig and council members. Thank you so much for your support of this proclamation of Safe Boating and Paddling Week. I and my colleague, who had to dash to another meeting, who is a Kenmore resident, Dale Vodica, we really appreciate you putting that safety message out. And we are the volunteer civilian segment of the Coast Guard. And the majority of our efforts are aimed at promoting recreational boating safety. And we're working on building collaborative relationships with all local cities, law enforcement, and emergency response agencies so that we can help the public learn how to be safer on the water. We provide boating education classes online and in person. We offer courtesy vessel safety checks for all types of boats, including paddlecraft. And we can provide other kinds of educational and outreach activities in tandem with other agencies serving Kenmore and the surrounding communities. We in the auxiliary look forward to working with you to have a summer without a single tragedy on our local waterways. Let's redouble our efforts to promote life jacket wearing, eliminate boating under the influence, and prepare and educate boaters and paddlers to enjoy our local waters safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes.
Hey, good evening, Council. Good to see you all. A little bit of introduction, but thank you for recognizing safe boating work and paddling. Being that I've been a U.S. Coast Guard licensed boat captain for over 40 years, my career has always been working on the water. As you know, I'm located at one of your famous parks, and we promote safe fun on the water. We do have a safety vessel that I do take out, and every season I will rescue at least 6 different people out on their own equipment. So I'm involved, my staff is involved, and we want everybody to learn about safe boating, if it's a power boat or just a kayak or canoe. I'm a big promoter of wearing a life jacket, a PFD, a personal flotation device. If more people wore them, we would have less drownings. I believe we had 4 last year. 2 were close to us up in the North Shore of Lake Washington. If they had a PFD on, we wouldn't be hearing this story. So we're big promoters of that. When people come to our stands, we actually give out PFDs to people that have their own boats that don't have a PFD. We come up to them, we talk to them. A lot of people don't like to hear it, but we got a way of trying to get to them and educate them. So we're out there doing the best that we can. And thank you very much for honoring safe boating and paddling. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for all that you do. And our third proclamation of the night, recognizing Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Kenmore. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential to our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Kenmore to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, Washington, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby designate the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies and activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. And accepting that will be Kenmore Public Works team member Anna Arnaud from the Public Works team. Did I get your name correct, Anna?
Almost. It's Arnaud.
Arnaud. I wasn't sure.
Arnaud.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, no,
Thank
no
you.
worries. No worries. I just want to thank you. Thank you and all the council members for honoring us. As talking for the Public Works crew, it's our honor and pleasure to provide our services to Kenmore to make it safe and more beautiful. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate all the work that you do.
Our pleasure.
All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Consent agenda is passed unanimously. Next, we have the business agenda. First item, climate action plan presented by Environmental Services Manager Richard Sawyer and Cascadia Environmental Group.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Well, good evening, Mayor, council members. And I should have Angela Peachman with Cascadia Consulting Group and fellow Environmental Services staff member Sammy with me this evening. And we are happy to present to you this evening the final draft climate action plan for you to consider adopting. We have provided a report that includes a matrix of the recent council and public feedback that we've incorporated into this final draft. And I don't have any kind of formal presentation or anything for you this evening. We just wanted to provide you an opportunity to adopt the plan and provide any last comment that you'd like to. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to council.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, I'm just curious as what the long-term staff needs will be. I see that you have a part-time person, but is that going to stay part-time, or are we going to increase the number of staff working on this?
Yes, so we currently are funded with a half-time dedicated person, which would be Sammy, through the remainder of this year. And as part of the upcoming budget process, we will be taking a closer look at staffing needs in particular, and coming back to council with a recommendation to continue staffing. So at a minimum, I do know we will need to at least continue the staffing level we have, but we'll have more information as we kind of work through that budget process. And also, right after adoption, one of the first things that we're going to start working on as well is kind of starting to figure out and allocating resources with some of our short-term goals that we want to start working towards.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Sharpneck.
Yeah, I just want to thank Richard and Sammy and the staff in Cascadia for just a really masterful piece of work. And really trying to address, everybody's concerns. As I mentioned in the earlier meeting, just want to underscore one part that may not be clear to people, that the portions of the industrial site emissions are accounted for in the GHG emissions figures, and that's the, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, the combustion and the I'm gonna forget the word, the emissions from transit, not derelict. There's a word. Anyway, those two components are, but the process emissions are the piece that aren't. And then there's a specific appendix that talks about that. And I think it's Appendix A. And so, this is, and looking at that, even the absolute kind of worst case scenario, which our plant is tiny relative to most, it would be a negligible amount of our emissions. So it's now that said, my understanding, Richard, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is a first pass at this, and that we'll be continuing to collect data over time. And monitoring it. And I think that part of my confusion, I know earlier on, was that asphalt plants definitely have a lot of emissions, but those emissions are not necessarily GHG emissions. And I think that's what I've kind of come to understand over time, is there's VOCs and particulates and various things, but greenhouse gas emissions are a particular kind of emissions, and plants like that tend to not have a significant level of GHG type of emissions. So I'm appreciative of your work to try to address that, and that's just one of literally hundreds of issues that have been raised, and how you've pulled it all together. Very, very impressive.
Hi, Councilman Marshall here. I apologize. Just wanted to make sure y'all know I was still here. My camera has malfunctioned. So thank you. And I think Councilmember Shrevenick was looking for vagabond emissions, maybe.
And Councilmember Marshall, if you need to speak up, just feel free to turn off your mic when there's a quiet moment and I'll call on you, okay?
Thank you. Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you just
Awesome.
fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember File?
Thank you. I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this over these past months. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I really wish we were closer to trying to match the goals of King County in the SCAP plan. So for example, King County's goal for 2030 is an 80% reduction. We're shooting at 50, and then by 2040, another 25%. So at 75, we're going to be quite behind our King County goals. And as partners in King County, we have a shared responsibility. I do believe we could do a little bit better on the goal setting for our benchmarks in this category area. And for our community watching at home, of course, a climate action plan is very different than an environmental action plan. They're very two separate different things. And I know there's been some confusion along the way. But this is a good start. I think we have more to grow. I wish we could revisit it in a year and then look at 2-year revisits. Thank you.
And if I can just step in, I think our goals do match King County and K4C, as well as the most recent goals and targets adopted by the King County-wide planning team as well. I don't know which targets that you're referencing. And I don't know if you want to step in, Angela, that's correct, right? Aren't we matching King County and K4C?
Yeah, both the overall emissions reduction targets and the targets we expressed in the implementation plan were based off of K4C commitments and adopted targets, yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember File?
Thank you. To be clear, I'm looking at the May 13th, 2021 SCAP plan. And when it says the new carbon neutral implementation plan with the goals for government operation to reduce greenhouse gases, GHG emissions by 25% by 2020, 50% by 2025, 80% by 2030. That's what I'm looking at. Thank you.
I believe what you're referring to is the Strategic Climate Action Plan.
Correct, SCAP.
Yes. Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. First, I wanted to just thank Richard, Sammy, and Angela for all the work that they've put into developing this plan, coordinating with all of the departments and doing outreach with the community. I also want to thank Deputy Mayor O'Kane, who championed this effort, and for the City Council to support it. I'm just looking forward to ensuring that the goals are met, that we support it through budget and strategy and prioritize the work each year. So I think we have a really great start in place. I think there's still a lot of work to be done to get this moving forward. And I think the first annual update will be a great opportunity for us to revisit and see if we're on track or can make more aggressive goals.
Councilmember O'Kane, Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank Councilmember Kugler for acknowledging me, as I am incredibly passionate about the environment. I definitely want to make sure that Councilmember Shrevenick's acknowledged for actually bringing the climate action plan to our 2020 retreat, where we had our first formal discussion about this. And so I want to make sure that that's acknowledged. I want to thank each and every one of us on the council for our participation and action for this. We've got a good baseline to build on. I appreciate that we're calling attention to two things that are going on in our world today, which are climate action and an environmental stewardship plan. Fortunately, we're in a city that is doing great work on both pieces. But I just want to say, as that was brought up earlier, it is very important. Environmental stewardship is a pathway to reducing emissions as well, or sequestering anyway. But thank you, City. Thank you for taking our priority that we gave to you and developing this incredibly high quality plan that's a baseline for us to work from. And I'm with our community that says, yeah, let's do more. Let's keep going. There were suggestions. And I even recall thinking about it when I was running for office, which is communities, a climate action committee, or what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I lost the word, but I love the suggestion. If we can get free resources, community resources, partnering with our city to help us take action on the environment and climate action, I think that's a good thing for us to investigate and move forward with. I know there are costs and expenses. I'm just saying my support for this because it's something I truly believe in. The more we open the doors to people knowing places that they can take action for the environment, the better. And the more that we all start feeling more hope about the situation we're in. So bravo to the city. Richard, you're great to work with on this. Sammy, you are so welcome here. Angela, thank you for your work. And to our city manager, his championing of this work is something I also want to thank. So I'm really thankful to be here that we get to move forward with this.
Any other questions or comments? I'd like to, I'm not going to repeat what all of my colleagues have already said, but consider it repeated. I appreciate the work that you've all done and put into this. It's very thoughtful, and yeah, I'm very happy with the work that we're doing here. If there's no further questions, hang on, I'm just checking one thing really quickly. Yeah, the question, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the City of Kenmore Climate Action Plan.
So moved.
Oh.
I think I
Go
heard
ahead. Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
Was for.
Okay. Yeah, Deputy Mayor made the motion. I think Councilmember Baker seconded it, and I think about 3 other people jumped in also. So we have a motion, a second on the table. Any further discussion? Not seeing any discussion. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is limited tax general obligation bond in the principal amount of not to exceed $6,600,000 to reimburse the city for land acquisition and public works facility construction costs. Ordinance 22-0548, presented by Finance and Administration Director Leticia Salcedo and Bond Counsel.
Hello, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. The item before you is an ordinance for your review and consideration. It is for the financing in the amount of 6.6 million, and that's for 2 things: construction costs, initial construction costs in the amount of 4 million, and reimbursement for the purchase of the acquisition of property in the amount of $2.6 million. The property purchase was acquired as for the future site of the public work shop, maintenance and operations. The financing is a tax exempt limited tax general obligation bond. It's a private placement with Banner Bank. It is structured as a line of credit, 3.45% interest rate at 22 years with semi-annual interest payments of a principal and interest after the drawdown period, and then interest only during the first 24 months. Cost of issuance, very low, approximately 1/3 of our previous issue. Again, due to the private placement with Banner Bank, whom the city has a banking relationship with. The $4 million for construction will be the initial amount. Once we have additional information as to the full scope of the project, we'll be coming back to you with more information with regards to that and maybe a possible additional financing for full construction. Closing is expected by before the end of the month, and that completes my presentation. Deanna, did you have anything else?
No, good evening, members of the council, Mayor. Thank you for having me here tonight. I've been working, of course, I'm Deanna Gregory, by the way. I probably should introduce myself. With Pacifica Law Group, we serve as bond counsel to the city and have been working on your behalf with respect to the financing and with preparation of the ordinance before you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions about the ordinance. The terms of the bond are incorporated into the ordinance and outline that draw period, as well as the payment provisions, the principal amount, the interest rate, and the city's options with respect to paying it off early if it so chooses. And so I'm again happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Baker.
Yes. This question is directed more toward Ms. Salcido. We borrowed, was it 2.6 from the state initially?
That's correct.
And now we're after 6.6 more, not to exceed.
Yes.
So let's see, that is close to $1 million that we're borrowing for this property. That I thought initially was going to be closer to 600,000. I mean, 6 million, excuse me.
6 million.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's including construction.
That's including construction, correct. 4 million for construction and 2.6 million for property acquisition.
Okay, that comes to 6.6. What about the 2.6 that we've already borrowed?
0.6 was for a reimbursement on the first property. As you recall, it was a total of 3 properties, contiguous properties. And so
Right.
The initial amount was for the first property. And this is for the second property.
Okay, and we're not paying that first loan off, correct? We're
No.
continuing to service that.
Exactly, yes.
So that brings the cost close to $1 million.
It's $9.2 million between the 2 issues, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I meant close to 10 million. Fine. And that's Councilmatic, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Councilmember Marshall, if nobody else
Yes.
is on. Oh, thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. So Ms. Salcido, can you tell us what went into the criteria for deciding which bank it would be, in Banner Bank in this case?
Initially, I set out to finance this second property through the Office of the State Treasurer. But there was a deadline, there was a timeline that we had to close by before we could finance with Office of the State Treasurer. So when that we financed the first property which had already closed. And so we needed to find financing. I went to the Office of the State Treasurer, and the timeline did not match the city's need for reimbursement. We have a banking relationship with Banner Bank for many years, so I contacted them. We negotiated terms. We reviewed possible methods of financing, and at the end, based on that information, in the great terms that they're offering the city, we decided to move in that direction.
Okay, thank you. And do you know what, or could you summarize briefly what would have been any differences that, or any better terms the state could have offered, or no?
One of the things that I noticed with this issue is the cost of issuance, because we do not have an underwriter, no rating agency. The cost of issuance to the total amount of the loan is 1/3 of what it was with the state, and 25%, 75% lower than what it was with our other issue in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Maybe I missed this, Ms. Salcido, but it says that we're reimbursing the city for costs related to the acquisition. Where did those costs come from initially? Or where do those funds come from?
Yes, general fund, and I believe it was strategic opportunities fund.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? I have a question for staff here, just on what exactly you're looking for, because I see two things. On the agenda, it says first reading, but then the agenda bill, it asks for us to adopt the ordinance tonight. What was staff hoping for?
Adoption of the ordinance at this point in time. There is no need for another reading.
No, I understand that we don't have I tried to institute a two-touch rule a couple of years ago, didn't get anywhere with my colleagues. So I know that we don't have to have a second reading, but I was just, it just caught me as kind of a funny wording there. Councilmember Baker?
Yeah, I cannot support this councilmatically. So just want to make a statement.
Okay. Well, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 22-0548, an ordinance of the city of Kenmore, Washington, authorizing the issuance of a limited time general obligation bond in the principal amount of not to exceed $6,600,000 to finance and or reimburse the city for costs related to the acquisition of land and construction of a public works facility, and to pay costs of issuing the bond, providing the form, terms, and covenants of the bond, authorizing the sale of the bond to Banner Bank, and providing for other matters related thereto. Okay, we have a motion. I'll second for discussion. Do we have any further discussion on this? Okay, I'm not seeing any discussion. Councilmember Kugler.
Well, I have a question for Councilmember Baker, and that is, would you approve it in a different format?
No, I had always assumed that it would come out of the funds that we had set aside. I never realized it was going to come out councilmatically.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. You know, Councilmember Baker said it really well. I thought this too was going to come out of our reserve budgets, and I really didn't want to see a pass through to our community. I have concerns about that. So I just want to make that statement and place that on record. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, now the quizzical look is, I'm just going to ask Leticia, is there any sort of increase in revenue that we're looking for from the community to support this bond? Yeah, okay.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the escalation in costs that this is representing, but you know, this is the direction that we committed to several years ago in terms of having a public workshop. So the fact that things cost more than they did 2 years ago is not something we can fully control.
Councilor Baker.
Yes, I continue to be a strong supporter of the public works. I'm just object to the way it's financed, so.
Deputy Mayor.
I'm not sure. Actually, I think someone might be able to answer this. The cost for the building itself, Public Works, would it be the same here or another place if we were to do something differently? What we're looking at?
Okay, that question for me?
Yeah, I'm not sure who could answer that. Is there someone from the city that could? And the reason I'm asking is due to the expense. Is it related? I know that we're investing in a lot of property. I personally voted for it. I'm comfortable with the direction. I have belief in it. But it was just a question that started crossing my mind. I think it's the longer we wait to build the project, the more expensive it's going to get. Is where my decision came from, and I know that the innovation and plans that I've heard from our staff related to what we're going to do, I think is going to be exceptional. But I just thought might be an interesting thing to know going forward.
Does any staff have a response to that, or?
I put a question to Jennifer Gordon. I'm seeing if she has an answer for you. She's replying back. If she does, we can promote her to answer that question.
Councilmember Kugler, while we wait.
I have a question about the timing of the $4 million for construction. I know that the full scope of the project isn't known yet, and that we may need additional funds once we know that. And so, I guess could you maybe just provide some reasoning as to why we do it that way, and why we don't wait for full design or a more clear picture of the total amount before seeking the bond?
So basically, at this point, we need the reimbursement for the property portion, the reimbursement for the land acquisition, but we also need initial construction costs, initial as when you set out to construct, there's going to be cost, and that would be your $4 million upfront, as opposed to having to front it with any of the strategic opportunities or the general fund at this point in time. Mm-hmm.
Any word from Ms. Gordon? Ms. Lukash?
Yeah, she unfortunately it's really a Rob question, and he's ill tonight, as we know. But I can promote her to answer a piece of the question. So let me do that.
Sure, that'd be great.
So I'm just wanted to clarify with the question that's being asked is that, will the cost of the public works maintenance facility be the same regardless of where it goes? Is that's the question? And the answer would be yes, it would be the same cost no matter what. But I still think we will be coming back to council in the very near future to discuss the options still, and because we don't have a direction moving forward and in the way that we're going to develop the site. So that's still kind of up in the air. So we'll be having those conversations really soon.
Thank you.
Councilor Falda, I see your hand come up.
Thank you. I really appreciate where the site will be at for the Public Works building, and I think it's a great location. I wonder, well, how will this be felt to our community? Just that impact. What would that look like?
I think we're getting beyond the scope of the bond question in front of us right now, and now we're digging into the larger public works facility question, which is a little different. Oh, are you talking about the financial impacts?
Yeah, the financial impact as
Okay,
well.
sorry.
What does a financial impact look to an average homeowner in Kenmore?
Let me see, the annual debt service of the 6.6 million will be 444,000. For this debt, for this issue.
I may be wrong, and if people think I'm wrong, feel free to jump in and correct me. But my sense is that folks may need a little bit more time to get some questions answered from staff before approving this bond. And if that is the case, and if I'm wrong, feel free to ignore this possible motion. But if that is the case, then I would entertain a motion to postpone this motion to the 31st of, no, wait, that's not a meeting. Sorry.
Mayor Herbig, if I may.
Yes.
In case we did need a little bit more time, this is scheduled for adoption under consent for next Monday.
Okay,
And
see,
if
I was confused by the agenda. The agenda both said first reading, and then it said it was asking for approval. So, which is why the motion was made.
Yeah, there was an updated agenda. Annotation.
Okay, I can only see what I loaded right before the meeting. So, but as it is, we do have a motion on the table that's been seconded, so we can't ignore that. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, and I think maybe the fundamental question we're still not addressing, which I don't have, but others sound like they do, is the 400,000 per year. What does that translate into? Is this additional funds? Is it, how would a homeowner or other resident feel the impact of this, or would they?
We have a population of 23,770. So if I divide 444,000 divided by 23,770, that's 1,867 per resident. I'm not sure if is that the information that you needed, Councilmember File?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think the question is, let's say I'm a homeowner. Am I going to essentially see an increase in my taxes to cover this? I mean, I let's just be super blunt.
And maybe I can jump in with the.
I was just gonna say this debt is going to be paid. The debt service will be coming from the general fund, from surface water, real estate excise tax, street and transportation benefit district. It is not an additional property tax.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key there is that unlike the last bond issues that the city has done, which was a voter approved unlimited tax general obligation bond that was payable from a dedicated stream of excess property taxes that was in addition to regular property taxes. This is a non-voted limited tax general obligation bond. There's a pledge of the city's full faith and credit and limited and regular property tax authority. But as was just stated, there is an expectation that other general fund revenues and in fact, utility revenues because of the use of the facility will be paid from other sources. So from a bondholder perspective, there is that pledge because that's what state law gives us, but the expectation is very different. So the way the ordinance reads is that the city will use regular property taxes if and to the extent other funds are unavailable.
And there is no proposed raising of any revenues to pay this specific bond, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready to call the vote.
Any further questions? Okay, I'm not saying any. Will the clerk please take the roll on the motion to approve?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
No.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you so much. And I guess you can take that off consent for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory, for joining.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next up, we've got American Rescue Plan Act Work Program presented by Assistant City Manager, ARPA Administrator, Stephanie Lukash.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, happy to be here with you tonight. I'm joined by Garrett Oppenheim and Janet Quinn. We'll be jointly presenting, and Garrett has a slide deck that was in the agenda packet. He's going to share that, and we'll get started. Great. So this conversation tonight is a follow-up conversation when we came to you at the end of March to talk about the findings, the results from our Balancing Act Prioritized Community Engagement Tool, and to talk about our work program, the $1 million that we were looking to allocate based on the community's feedback and council's direction. And so we're here tonight to present some ideas about that and ask for an adoption, which you'll see on the next slide, what we're looking for. If you recall, back in March 28th, the business assistance at $175,000 was already approved. We're considering that part of this program. And then the top 3 vote getters in the Balancing Act Prioritized tool were the Homelessness Response Pilot Program, Catch-up Learning and Child Care Support, and Human Services Funding. So what we're recommending tonight is that the council adopt a $575,000 work program for 2022 to 2026, and that we come back later this year with recommendations on the remaining $425,000 of the $1 million. And part of it is that we have several things that are currently underway, including conversations with Bastyr, and they have applied for grant funds. We're exploring combining some ideas, and we'll talk about that later. But what we're recommending is, because this is a big program, all 4 of those items will take a heavy lift to implement. We feel like it's plenty to get us started and then come back with the remaining work. So this is centering us, this slide, on the funds that we've spent so far. Kenmore Cares was $1.05 million. If you remember, we spent an additional $50,000 on that program. Affordable housing, $3.2 million. The urgent business assistance that we did, the program staffing. So I took the $50,000 of the Kenmore Cares out of what we were holding in reserve. So that's at $275,000 now. And then you'll see the $575,000 work program that we're talking about tonight. That would leave $425,000 unallocated for recommendations later this year. We were preparing this slide deck and looked at these guiding principles and high-level strategy. This is from your July meeting last year. And we thought it was worth spending just a moment to center on how well we've done. And thank you to council for your solid direction. If you look at these guiding principles, all of the work that we've done that was reflected on that previous slide is consistent with both these guiding principles and the strategy that you adopted. So center equity, we've definitely done that. Provide immediate relief and fund legacy work. We're doing both of those things. Tie funding decisions to pandemic impacts. Everything we've done has been that. Consider early wins and something for everyone. I feel like we've done that. Assess long-term sustainability. Absolutely. Factor in community feedback. I feel like we've done really well. Leveraging other funding sources. The $3 million from the Arts Trust Fund is a great example of how we're doing that well. And then maximizing partnerships. So I just wanted to just spend a moment and just reflect and say, thank you to council for giving us such solid guidance that we were able to use in this work. And then the high level strategy in terms of immediate relief to residents in need was the Kenmore Cares program. Immediate relief to businesses in need, we did the urgent business assistance, and more business assistance, as you know, is coming. And then positioning the city, community, and business to transition into a post-COVID era is what this is all about. And then the Enduring Legacy Project is really our affordable housing work that is underway. So thank you to the council. So I just wanted to center, it was worth spending just a moment to look at these and remind ourselves how well we've done. So I'm going to turn this over now to Garrett, who's going to talk about the homelessness response pilot program. So Garrett, take it away.
Stephanie. So the community spoke loud and clear in its support for this program. It was the top vote getter by far in the Balancing Act poll that we had open from around Christmas until early March. In implementing this program, we plan to maximize a partnership, which is tying back to guiding principle number 8, as we'll work with a nonprofit that specializes in this field, with the plan to have the program up and running in the second half of this year. We've already been exploring potential partners in anticipation of this program's adoption, and we should be able to select one pretty soon. Now I'm going to hand it over to Janet to discuss catch-up learning and child care support.
So our plan is, as you can see, to work with the North Shore School District to provide assistance. We recognize that we're not the experts in this category, and we have a potential partner in the North Shore School District. When I was preparing just gathering some data for the Title VI report this year, it was kind of astounding to me how much most of our schools have increased in the low income category, nearly doubled for a couple of our schools, and only one school wasn't highly impacted with an increase in low income. So clearly there's a need for it. As you know, we have one Title I school, which gets a little bit more funding from the state for that, but there is a need in other schools as well. So we wanted to explore a partnership with the North Shore School District to address low income students, perhaps Kenmore wide, not just in Kenmore Elementary. Don't know yet what the shape of that program will be like, but we want to continue to engage with the school district to talk more about it. We anticipate that this will be later into 2022 or early 2023 that we really get a solid plan together for this particular one. And then I think I'm turning it over to Garrett again.
Thank you, Janet. So next I'm going to talk about the human services funding. And one of the 6 categories that the ARPA final rule lists to respond to the public health emergency posed by the COVID-19 pandemic is behavioral health. As such, as we look to initiate a human services funding program, it would focus on this area. We'll issue an RFP focused on behavioral and mental health needs. The final rule explicitly calls out mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and other behavioral health services, clarifying that it covers an expansive array of services. Those are for prevention, treatment, recovery, harm reduction for mental health, substance abuse, and other behavioral challenges caused or exacerbated by the pandemic. The final rule further states that behavioral health services can be provided to members of the general public without further analysis as to whether the impacts of the pandemic impacted those individuals or whether the service is responsive to the pandemic. Recipients can use this category to respond to increased rates of behavioral health challenges at a population or an individual level, and new behavioral health challenges or the worsening of pre-existing challenges, including new barriers to accessing treatment. So the RFP we issue should seek the provider community's input as to how we can best utilize the funds that we have. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Janet again to briefly talk about our partnership with the University of Washington.
Yeah, we just have this unique opportunity to partner with the University of Washington, particularly the Bothell campus. They have a community-based learning and research, and they match teachers and students with local organizations such as the City of Kenmore to kind of build out a program or to do research or just really partnering with the organization at their direction to just provide additional research and insights And we've been talking this week to the School of Business, and just there are lots of different opportunities, I think, that are implicit within this. Again, we don't know exactly how we'll utilize them, but it's so great to have them nearby. And I think the Seattle campus as well is another group that we're talking with. So just kind of exciting to be able to, as we saw earlier in the goals, to be able to hit that partnership strongly. So what we're coming to you tonight for, we are just making a suggestion that as you can read on the screen, that this program of $575,000 in the American Rescue Plan Act work program, that be adopted to include the programs that we talked about tonight: the homelessness response pilot, the catch-up learning and childcare, human services funding, and business assistance. And back to you, Garrett.
So after this work program has been adopted, $425,000 of the $1 million will remain unallocated. One idea we had to determine what other programs to pursue in 2023 and 24 is to return to the community and once again ask them for their input through the Balancing Act tool. This will give us the chance to see if the community still supports programs like the subsidized pool program for Kenmore youth and landlord and renters assistance, or if they prefer the Bastyr University hydroponic greenhouse and nutrition camps that were proposed after the tool had initially been opened. We would also include a recreation option because of how much high-end support the City Hall playground and the Pathways to Parks programs both had the first time around. We still have access to the Balancing Act tool for the year, so this is a cost-effective way to once again reach out to the public and hear their thoughts. That's all we've prepared tonight, so thank you. And if you have any questions, we are prepared to answer those.
Could we take up? Thank you. Questions? Oh, okay. Councilmember Marshall.
Actually, a comment, but I say I fully support going to the public and reintroducing the tool and see what our citizens say.
Any other questions? Councilmember Shrubnik.
I could go either way on that piece. I feel like we got great participation the first time and a little reluctant to kind of overwhelmed, but I could go either way on that. But my comment is about the behavioral health piece, and just want to fully, endorse that and underscore that, behavioral health care is health care. It's substance use treatment and mental illness treatment, and that is part of healthcare. And so what I would challenge us to do, and 250, it sounds like a lot, but it doesn't go very far in the healthcare system. So what I would challenge us to do, and one other point, Kenmore is in kind of a, and I know we're, thinking about crisis services potentially fairly close by. That's a separate initiative, but we're kind of in a outpatient behavioral health desert here. And sort of like a food desert. And so I would challenge us to see if we could partner either with Evergreen or, some other partner to actually get preventative and outpatient care here, or pretty darn close by, because that's a need. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? I have a question for Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if I was muted. I just wanted to follow up on what Councilmember Shrubnik was talking about with, the amount of money towards the behavioral health. Would it be possible? I would actually be open to going to the public to see if there were more funding, if there was a way to use more funding, or would that be, are we right-sized for now with what we are allocating towards that? That's my question.
I mean, that's really council's decision, right? The level of funding, that's part of why we're here. I think we felt like the 250,000, we could definitely make a difference. You can always go higher, and there will be that opportunity, right? As there's that 425,000 that we could allocate additional funds later, especially as we know more and we see what proposals come in. And I appreciate where Councilmember Srebnick's going with the kind of targeting of the services to fill that hole that we have in terms of availability of the services. So we'll be looking at that. It's a great point.
Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. You know, I'm excited that our community got to take part in planning for, you know, our beautiful Kenmore. We put forward this, you know, wonderful voting tool so that they could choose how, you know, we should proceed with a portion of the dollars, right? And I really want to honor our community's voting. You know, I think that it's fair. We definitely can add more or less and future programming, and I think what's proposed tonight is good. I think another round of voting is kind of precarious. You know, our community has already spoken. They spoken and they voted. And they voted with their voices, and I think this asking them to vote again is kind of like second guessing our community. I think it's a kindness to our community. And so I want to respect our community and our voters, even if it was a voting tool. I think, you know, at least tonight's a good place to start. And I think that we should move forward, you know, later this year with a plan for next steps on community priorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Can I just?
Yeah, of course.
I just wanted to be sure that it was understood that that was apart from the recommendation that we're the motion that we're asking for tonight. That takes into consideration what the community weighed in on and what council directed. And we're not suggesting changing that in any way, unless that's your option. But going back to the community was for additional information in consideration of the hydroponic idea coming in after we went out to the community, and then just reprioritizing with dollars that they could distribute in a different way through another round of the tool. But that's just one idea. Sure.
Any other questions? I have a quick question for Mr. Oppenheim about the $50,000 for homelessness response pilot program. Do we feel like that is enough to actually get something meaningful on the ground?
That's the hope. We've already talked to, like I said, one provider, and they came in a little over that, but we're still talking to them to see if they can bring that down a little bit.
Okay. Because I would like to see us do that. It was, as you said, the top priority, but it isn't one of the smaller amounts that in fact, I think it is the smallest amount we're talking about tonight. So any other questions? All right. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the $575,000 American Rescue Plan Act work program for 2022-2026 to include a homelessness response pilot program, catch-up learning and childcare support, human services funding, and business assistance.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Looks like Councilmember Kugler had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you, Councilmember Kugler?
I was just going to make a comment, and it was similar to what you said. It's fine. I don't have a question.
Okay.
So moved.
Are we second?
That, yeah.
Okay, so the motion on the table is adopt the $575,000 American Rescue Plan Act work program for 2022 to 2026 to include a homelessness response pilot program, catch-up learning, childcare support, human services funding, and business assistance. Any further discussion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a study session agenda. Kenmore tree regulations, proposed amendments presented by Senior Planner Samantha Loyick and Policy Intern Garrett Oppenheim.
Thank you. I was just being promoted, so I missed part of that. But thank you, Mayor and council members, for taking the time this evening to talk about trees again. So I'm going to share my screen and we will jump into what we refer to as List 2. So just a moment. Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm Samantha Loyick, Senior Planner with City of Kenmore Development Services Department. And with me, we have Garrett Oppenheim, who you just met. And we are going to go through these recommendations together, and I will start off. So as a reminder to kind of see how far we've come, and we're just looking at this path from 2019 when council first said they wanted more information on trees and they wanted to pursue more tree regulations. And so from there, we conducted a series of workshop council meetings to discuss what those would look like. So there were two lists that were created, List 1 and List 2. And in March, List 1 was adopted as Ordinance 22547. And that's in effect right now. So tonight we are going to talk about List 2. So before we jump to List 1, we'll recognize what on List 2 that you changed or that was adopted previously, because this is a kind of a part 1 of 2. So the part 1 that's already completed is that the size of a significant changed. So that was lowered to 6 inches. And then we revised the tree retention requirements for preparing tree plans for development. So that's saying that when you're retaining a certain tree, you couldn't choose like cotton or alderwood. There are certain species that you couldn't choose to receive credit. It's a little different than what we're talking about tonight. We'll get into that. And then we codified the tree removal permit application, updated some language, and then had the tree permits valid for 1 year instead of 2, so that replacement trees got planted faster. Tonight, we're going to look at increasing the tree density for new development, decreasing the yearly tree removal allowances for single-family lots, always requiring replacement, and establishing an exceptional tree program. All of these things were on list number 2. Before we jump into those, it's important to recognize other considerations. These code changes that we are discussing tonight will have staff impacts, specifically to development services staff. So it will create more review, inspection, and code enforcement. So this will result in staff needs and staff time. So I want to make sure that we say that. So the first 3 are, and we're totally for discussion. So remember, we want your feedback. Nothing is final. We want to know how you want us to write the ordinance and what feedback you have. We've gone from what we've talked about so far to kind of where we're at today. So I will finish, I'll go 1 through 3, and then we'll go to the next one, and it's just a discussion. So currently the tree density calculation for development proposal is 30 tree units per net buildable area. And we're, the proposed language is increasing that to 40. And so previously, many years ago, it was 20. And so we're just kind of incrementally increasing that requirement to have more trees retained. The second is to decrease
Councilor Marshall?
Sorry.
That's
Thank you.
okay.
And so you just said that's trees retained, but is it only retained or could it also be replaced, or is it just retained?
It can be replacement trees or retained, or a combination, with replacement trees with the highest priority. Or sorry, retained trees with the highest priority.
Thank you.
Councilmember Baker? You're muted.
Can you define a tree unit, please?
Yes. So in our code in chapter 1857, there is a table, and the tree units are based on tree sizes. And so it as the diameter breast height, DBH, as that gets larger, your tree units are increased. So it's not one tree equals one unit. It could be one, really large tree might actually equal like 20 tree units. It just depends on that, on the size, and it would have to be, it couldn't be a tree that's in poor condition or like that. So it has to be a tree in good condition based on the size.
Okay, I think we can scoot on.
Okay, we will scoot. Okay, number 2. We talked about decreasing the allowance for single family. Right now on the left, you'll see our current regulations, and it's a tiered system depending on your lot size. And the proposed is to change it to 2 trees per year, regardless of your lot. See no discussion. Okay, we'll keep going.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just have a question. So 2 trees per year, what if someone has a really unhealthy tree or something like that on their property? Or would they still be limited to the 2 trees per year?
So there are exceptions.
What would a member of our public have to?
Sure, good question.
Major concern.
There are questions or exceptions provided for trees that are hazardous. Hazardous trees would have to have a tree risk rating of high or extreme. So that's saying that failure, the tree is going to fail and it's going to hit basically an occupied structure, to say that there's a danger here. If there's a tree that's generally not healthy, but it's not posing any risk, and it doesn't receive that type of rating from an arborist, that would be counted towards your 2 trees per year. But if it's hazardous, then it's not counted, because that's an exception, and we certainly value human life. So
thank you. That was the exact thing that I wanted to hear or understand. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker and then Councilmember File.
Yeah, so you can remove 2 significant trees a year, or is there a limit on significant trees?
So this would be significant trees. So trees that are 6 inches or greater in DBH.
Also, what would prohibit somebody from clear cutting their property over a 3-year period? Let's say they had 6 significant trees on there, and they took down 2 a year. What's going to prohibit them from clear cutting?
If they remove 2 per year, nothing to prohibit that.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. And so, of course, I'm going to ask about a mitigation plan. Has there been a mitigation plan yet developed? So you've already mentioned that, there's, of course, exemption for hazardous trees, but hazardous trees that could pose a fire risk to the home, cause a house damage, root damage to a home would seem feasible for reasons to remove a tree. So I would like to know if this is kind of part of that mitigation plan, or do we even have one yet?
So when you say mitigation plan, what I think of is like a tree replacement plan, but are you talking about, okay, you are. Okay, so that leads us into our next slide that talks about replacement. The next thing that we are talking about is to always require replacement. So thank you, that's a great transition. The current regulations require replacement only when the trees are in a critical area or buffer, trees are in the shoreline, the trees are part of an approved tree plan, so like part of a subdivision and they were retained, or if they're part of required landscaping, like if you're thinking for maybe like a business or commercial space. Those require replacement currently. However, right now, if you're within that table that we looked on the previous slide, if you're working within your yearly limits, there's no replacement required. And so this is the mitigation I think that you're talking about, is to say this proposal, or for discussion, is to say we're going to keep these regulations and then we're going to change this last one that says that there's no replacement. And so that we would require replacement at a 1-to-1 ratio, or whatever ratio you are proposing. Did that answer that question?
That leads me into that, absolutely, and I really appreciate that. And then my question becomes, how likely are new trees to fail? And I would hate to see a 1-to-1 replacement given the fail rate of young trees.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Currently in our critical areas, buffers, and shorelines, our replacement ratio is 3-to-1, and that is especially to account for trees that aren't going to survive. We have not decided on a ratio for the tree removals on individual single-family lots. In my experience with issuing or approving permits, when the 3-to-1 ratio is applied, which it's a code requirement, there's a lot of pushback on that, where people say, I have a single-family lot and I do not have room. I just took these trees out. I took these 2 trees out and now you want me to put 6 trees in. And so there's definitely a lot of pushback on that. But that's totally up for discussion for what you guys think is reasonable. So I'll leave it there if that's okay. And then we'll continue on to the next, but feel free to ask any questions.
And that kind of addresses Councilmember Baker's concern from earlier about somebody clear cutting their yard over 3 years. They would still be having to replace trees as they go, correct?
Correct,
okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kugler?
I have a comment about the previous slide and this one.
Let's go to I'll go to the previous. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say I like this proposal. And then for the replacement, I'm wondering if I don't think we give people the option to pay towards like tree credits for someone else, but can we? I think other cities do that, right?
We discussed that, and that was on your list too, was to have either a fee in lieu program, so having a tree fund, or to have some kind of tree rebates. And we partnered with King Conservation District and we're having a tree giveaway event, but this proposal does not include a tree fund. And I think that is largely due to staffing, is that we couldn't figure out how it would actually, who would manage it and how much time that would take and who would really take that on. So it's not included in this set of proposals.
Councilmember File?
Thank you. Adding to that, I think it might be worth our while to look at how Kirkland has implemented exactly that sort of a program. I believe they allocate and require they allocate tree credits or a certificate, as well as required training on how to manage and care for the trees residents hope to plant. But I think it's a little less oversight and a little bit more ensuring that the resident takes good priority on the tree management. And if there's a failure, a plan for mitigating that too. They have a really lovely plan we should probably take a look at.
Okay.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Thanks. This is great, Samantha. Thank you. But I'm actually wondering a few things. I guess rather than saying, well, that'll cost, with the fee and lieu idea, well, that'll be staff time, so we didn't include it. I guess I would rather hear what it would take to implement it, and then we get to make the call on that. Maybe that can be part of our budget discussion, because that is a key piece. It's not always feasible to plant in the same place, and it may not be desirable. There may be other areas that need trees more, if they're, repairing corridors or, whatever. I mean, there could be very good reasons why we might want to plant in different places. So that's one. And the other is just, this is a huge priority for our citizens. It fits with climate action. It fits with environmental stewardship. The number one thing on here, going from 30 to 40 tree units. I mean, what would happen if we went to 60 or 80? I mean, I guess I'd love to understand what would be the impact of really blowing that one up a bit. That's the number one issue that I hear around trees, is the big developments, and with, to a lesser extent, certain residential tree clearing, but that's far and away secondary to the developments that essentially clear cut. So I guess I would really like to understand that, and I'd like to understand what our neighboring cities do around this. We don't want to completely stifle development by, having regulations that are infeasible. But I don't know. I mean, frankly, I don't know what's infeasible. I would love to really go bigger on the first one in particular, and then the residential one, maybe even consider, 2 every other year. I mean, why does it have to be 2 a year? It's sort of like, think about it. It's like, maybe you don't need to take these down, one after the other. And, just, I don't know. I feel like, can we do more? Can we do more?
And we can come back and look at that. I think I understand what you're saying with what would something like 60 tree units look like. So maybe I can research that and maybe get something that can illustrate that.
I mean, I think a question I have, I don't see anybody else's hand up though, is at what point does it become an impediment to actually like building housing that we absolutely need in the city also? Tree preservation is important. I think, if we could thread the needle with, some sort of like what Councilmember File was talking about earlier with, I'm going to get the word wrong, but, a tree bank, or people being able to trade tree units. So we're still getting the same a number of tree units in the city, but are able to allow for, an ADU to be built or something like that. Because at some point, if we do what Councilmember Shrubnik was saying, there does come a point where there's now no new buildable areas, period. And that's kind of there's a bit of a balance to be had there. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go on. Oh, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. And I'm just going to say on the counter, I think that is what most of our citizens are asking for when I know we do need to develop housing. I do encourage, I encourage us always looking at parking lots and underutilized land first before going into those areas. But say Balburney or some of the other developments where we have seen clear cutting in the community, those have been visible concerns. So I'm comfortable with making that harder for developers personally.
I just think it could run completely counter to the work that's being done around Missing Middle at some point. Anyway, sorry to get us off track.
That's good discussion. Thank you. So those are kind of the top three, and I have taken some notes here so that we can come back and have additional discussion about the questions that you had, or we can follow up and provide that another time. But the fourth thing that we wanted to talk about, which is a large piece of it, is establishing an exceptional tree program, and we'll take it from here.
Thank you, Samantha. Well, you all have heard from me about exceptional trees before, so I'm not going to get into the background. I'll just tell you about as you all know, Kenmore does not currently have an exceptional tree program, so I'll get into what the proposed ordinance does. It protects 16 species of tree at various diameters of breast height, and any other tree that reaches a DBH of 48 inches. The 16 protected species all come from the list protected by Seattle's exceptional tree rules, though some of the threshold sizes have been increased a bit as Seattle's are occasionally extreme. For instance, Seattle protects madronas at only 6 inches, whereas Lake Forest Park uses the same 12-inch threshold that we've included here. The only trees exempt from protection at the 48-inch size are alders, black cottonwoods, English holly, and Leland cypress. The protections granted in the proposed ordinance prevent removal, harming, burning, topping, attaching anything to the tree that requires puncturing its bark, and pruning beyond industry standards. By its terms, the proposed ordinance would be applicable to new developments, as well as current property owners, public agencies, franchise utilities, and golf courses. The proposed ordinance provides for 4 exceptions from its terms, such that exceptional trees can be removed under certain circumstances, most of which require replacement, either on-site or off. Those exceptions are for reasonable use of the property, hazard trees, provision of access to development sites where no alternative alignments are feasible, and for the city itself when it's necessary for public roads, bridges, and utilities. The penalty set in the proposed ordinance for violating its terms is a fine up to $2,500 per inch DBH, with a maximum fine of $150,000, though that can be doubled if the violator can be subjected to criminal penalties if the violation is done willfully and maliciously. The proposed ordinance further allows for minimum lot sizes to be reduced to 5,400 square feet for residential subdivisions that contain exceptional trees, and the reduction of setbacks to 10 feet in residential zones and 5 feet in other zones to maximize exceptional tree protections. If you have any questions or comments about that, happy to take those now.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. So, you hit upon a sensitive issue for Kenmore, of course. We have some trees that are native species and, just a handful, right? And trees like this, like madrona trees, for example, we have just a small handful. And I would want to see these protected in Kenmore versus a larger diameter, for example, especially for a species of trees that's starting to dwindle within our city limits. And I can absolutely agree with a non-exemption for nuisance trees. I want to make sure when we're talking about exceptional trees that we're not just talking about deciduous or needle trees, that we're talking about broadleaf trees as well. And I think a detailed list would be helpful. I certainly would want to see some sort of a match in our tree design or our urban design program. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, thank you. When this was first raised, I really thought, I want that. And now that I look at it in the kind of cold light of day or evening, I don't. And here's the reason. I feel like it's arbitrary what we include. And for example, exceptional to whom and for what purpose? Exceptional because it's pretty, because it's big, because it has birds that go there. I mean, what do we mean by that? Location of it, it's on a, wetland. I mean, well, I guess wetland, you wouldn't take it out anyway, but I mean, it's the location. So I don't think this pure size or the list is sufficient. For example, we have a deodar cedar, not on the list. It's about 50 feet tall. It is absolutely an exceptional tree. I think, Samantha, you've even seen it. And, we're not alone. There's lots of great trees out there. I guess, to me, this is a little bit of a red herring, and it'll be a heck of a lot of staff work. We already have heard from the community about the arbitrariness of what's included and not included. And I think focusing on the other pieces of this, the residential removal, the tree removal, and the commercial development removal and replacement, get us to the same end, which is we want more tree canopy. We want to save riparian corridors. I think, these other proposals, in addition to the ability to place trees more strategically in terms of replacement with the fee and lieu, will get us there more efficiently in terms of staff time and cause a lot less headaches.
Deputy Mayor.
I actually do like having the exceptional tree program. Personally, I hear where Councilmember Shrubnik is coming from. A definition around the nature of why we have designated these things, I think, is what's really important. I also think there's something here that is important to our community, which is a penalty for when people go against our tree program. I've heard community members ask for that. What is it that we had an experience last year with someone taking down some trees, and there's really nothing that we could do. And I don't know if they would have fit within this program, but say if they had, maybe that property owner might have given this a second thought. So I'm comfortable with this. I want to say I recognize the efficiencies and concerns that Councilmember Shrubnik had.
Could you speak a little bit to the subdivision and the minimum lot size of 5,400 that's listed here?
Yeah, so the idea there is that if somebody wants to subdivide a residential lot, it would allow, rather than the minimum sizes that are in place now, they'd be allowed to be smaller so that you could have, it would just allow more protection of trees that are on the property. If you could have one large lot and then that contains probably the exceptional tree, and then the smaller lot that's broken off, it allows people, to subdivide the lots more. And I think to what you were speaking to earlier, Mr. Mayor, the missing middle, I think it might allow to build some more houses that would fit into that.
And just to add to that, Garrett, I think that what this option is specifically for R4 zoned properties where the minimum lot size is 7,200 versus R6 where it's 5,400 already. So this is saying in those instances where you're in an R4 and it's 7,200, however, you need to retain this exceptional tree. In instances like that, you could have that 5,400. For R6, it's not a benefit.
Okay, thank you.
So finally, that's all we prepared tonight. There's no formal action needed on your part at this time. We're simply trying to start a discussion and get further guidance as to whether we're on the right track or if there are further changes you'd like us to see before we proceed. Brian, Samantha, and I are all here, and if you have any more questions, we will do our best to answer those. Thank you.
Any further questions? Comments? Councilmember Kugler.
Just a comment, because you heard two differing opinions on the exceptional tree program, so I thought I'd just weigh in that there was an assumption that I was making, which is that the larger diameter meant a better old growth tree. So that so if that is not an accurate assumption, I think that would be helpful to know, or even hear like your recommendation as a arborist.
There are, as trees grow older, the benefits of them are also intensified. So we really do want these old growth, well, old growth is very old, but we want these large trees, right? Because replanting them with smaller ones is not going to provide the same air quality, habitat, surface water, shade and cooling. There are so many benefits to these big trees.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the hard work on this. Of course, you know how hard we fought for moving forward with tree protections for Kenmore. Just hearing from our community and the great demand for protecting our tree canopy and preserving that for future generations. Given our commitment to climate action, we started that step and we have to continue that forward. That plans for what we're doing, and I'm really happy with what we saw tonight. I have concerns, of course, I expressed. I do know that in tree recommendations, we kind of rudely stick to or crudely stick to recommendations of planting maples or deciduous trees, and why that is a type of trend Kenmore has done. We also changed the canopy of our community and our landscape. And in planning for climate, global warming, the continued hot summers we're going to have, we have to be really incorporating broadleaf trees into part of our plan. That also helps species and habitats continue to thrive. So thank you so much for all this hard work. Really excited. Really want to make sure we have good mitigation plans that are nice and clear, not complicated for our community, and hopefully a landing page for all this when we're done. Thank you.
Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, just clarification. On the two trees that somebody is allowed to cut down, they have to replace it with two trees, correct?
Yes, so that was kind of up for discussion on what the ratio would be with that. But I think it's proposed at 1-to-1.
Okay. The other thing is I haven't really heard anything mentioned about replacement DBH. How big or how small are they allowed to replace with DBH?
So we don't have a proposed requirement for the DBH size. Partly that is because the smaller and young trees establish more easily, and they're easier for homeowners to get their hands on. I know that we do have minimums for landscaping requirements, and that's typically for new projects or commercial under the landscaping code. But for property owners, the easiest thing is probably for them to be able to go to Home Depot and buy these smaller trees. But again, totally up for discussion.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. That's where we touched upon a little bit of the likelihood of tree survival rates after planting, like young trees. I think we have to plan for that option. If somebody's going to plant younger trees, that the ratio 3:1 is the example. And if they don't want to plant that amount, I think we need to have a tree program and a tree rebate program so that we're giving credits and we can develop that tree canopy and preserve that here in Kenmore. If we're not planning today for tomorrow, we are harming our future generations and we will be losing out on the diverse ecosystems we have present in our community. I think we want to preserve the beauty and the charm of Kenmore, and we only can do that by planning. Thank you.
May I speak to that real quickly? In the exceptional tree ordinance, it does say that, in the proposed ordinance, that for the reasonable use exception, if you remove trees, and the replacement trees have to remain viable for 5 years or themselves be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio. So that is something that was accounted for in that.
So keep in mind, these are two things. There's the exceptional tree, and then there's the yearly for the significant tree, where we're always requiring replacement.
And Councilmember Marshall with a comment or question.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Sorry for continuing technical difficulties. Question on the replacements then, I may have missed it. The trees surely must be then of hopefully native species or like kind. And then I just wanted to say I totally support Councilmember Srebnick's earlier comments on how much further can we go towards protection in large developments. Is there an impact, wholly negative impact we'd see on development after X number of 50, 60 trees or thereabouts, or do we know that? And then also, can we look at instead of limited to 2 per year trees that can be cut down for that allowance, single family or smaller properties, or whichever it is, could it be every other year? I support those. I support going further towards protection. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
And actually, Councilmember Marshall said everything that I wanted, but I thought I'd just speak it and say it. I like the idea of every other year in addition to the other comments that were made.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I had the question, Councilmember Marshall here. I had the question about do the replacement trees have to be, should they be native, or are they already proposed as to be native trees? Thanks.
So as currently proposed, they do not have to be native. When we do require them to be native in instances where there are critical areas or shorelines. But in this kind of discussion piece for significant trees, no, we don't have that requirement as proposed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my thought is I would just militantly advocate for all replacement being native trees strictly. Thanks.
Councilor File, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did. I just want to concur with Councilmember Marshall's earlier statements and sentiments. Very well said. I also am now kind of picturing that uber designed yard, with the palm trees in front. We have a few of those in Kenmore, right? And quite frankly, I am a big fan of a palm tree. But I can see where we're going here with design and that planning bed. While I really like the idea of ensuring that we're continuing varieties, our Pacific Northwest varieties, it kind of falls into a funky area then. When you think about design differences of a person's yard. For example, what they intend is, beautiful for their yard may not be a Pacific Northwest variety tree. It might be a palm of some sort. And I have no harsh thoughts on that or directions to dissuade that. But I guess as long as we are not perpetuating harmful species that will take over, our community, that would be fine. The last thing we need is a bunch of cottonwoods and spreading their lovely overburdensome harm to our community. Thank you.
Ms. Lukash, is that your hand?
It is. I just want to make sure that staff's receiving clear direction. There's been a lot of really good discussion. I'm just looking to Samantha Garrett. Do you feel clear on the direction? And I'm wondering, is there specific research or like you just want to maybe zoom in a little bit more on the direction so that they can proceed and feel clear on what the direction from council tonight.
Samantha, do you want to go first?
Okay, I was looking at you. I was like, "Are you okay?" So I have a lot of notes here written down, but I think looking at these notes, I don't really see a consensus on what needs to change moving forward. I know that there are some concerns about the exceptional tree program itself and whether or not that could, be the benefit from that can be from increasing the tree density requirement and lowering the number of trees removed per year, and if we need both. So I'm not sure what direction council wants us to go in respect to the exceptional tree ordinance.
Yeah, I concur with that.
I would be fine moving to one, with exceptional tree moving forward as we have planned, but with the recommendation that Councilmember Marshall had mentioned of restricting to removal to one every other year.
Councilmember File, I would ask that you wait to be recognized. I appreciate where you're going, but please raise your hand. Continue, but.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you for the mindful reminder. But I'm ready to see an ordinance come back to us and move forward there. I really appreciate, I don't want to take any more time, but I think I'll leave it there.
Councilmember Shrubnik and then Councilmember Baker.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we can, does it have to be one ordinance? Can we, ultimately, yes, but can we vote, not today, but when you bring this back on each component that would be comprised this ordinance? Because I think we're not quite there as a group, whether it's on the exceptional trees or how far we want to go with the commercial the DBH, not the DBH, but the ratio, 30 or 40 tree units, or 60 or 80. And, I think there was a request to do a little more research on that and then, potentially explore, in addition to that, the every other year for the residential. Which is, both of those are separate. Both of those are separate from the exceptional tree, which we're basically saying you can't remove the exceptional tree. So I also think it would be helpful to have the penalties clearer for those other components. I thought Deputy Mayor O'Kane's comment was well taken.
Councilor Baker.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of retaining an exceptional tree. I'm also very much in favor with Councilmember Marshall and his suggestion that exceptional trees can only be removed every other year, not each year. And Also, I'm in favor of having replacement trees be native species.
Right, and Councilmember Marshall here, if it's okay.
Sure.
Okay, and I can't see everybody, but yes, I did want to get consensus on those two things that Councilmember Baker just mentioned, which was the replacement trees being native, required to be native, and then the significant trees limited to every other year. So consensus on those two things to give staff some direction, but I can't see, so I don't know if I'll get it. Thank you.
I believe there's general consensus around that, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I guess I would ask Samantha. I remember, I think we've had this discussion around the native trees before. And I think I was pretty passionate about native trees, but there was something I recall in one of our discussions that did maybe give reason for more breadth. Am I missing something? You're the arborist. I just didn't recall there. I mean, is there like some form of limitation we could do that would be good for the area? But
I think that native trees are always great, but if we're restricting them only to native trees, then that is going to decrease the diversity that we have. And I don't think that that's a benefit to the urban forest. I think that we already have a requirement that they're native in critical areas and buffers and shorelines. And so by making them the replacements be required to be native here, it would limit the selection for property owners and also reduce the diversity.
yeah, I definitely understand the drive for native trees. I am surprised to be saying this, but I do feel comfortable with more breadth of options for property owners. We have community members that are investing a lot in their properties and landscaping, and replacing the trees is definitely the #1 priority, preferably mindful replacement. I just feel a little concerned about limiting too much restriction. That I could go either way, but I just wanted, I mean, actually, I do err a little bit more towards a bit of latitude. Maybe someone wants I don't know, a Fuji cherry tree, or, something beautiful that is going to be good for the community and is going to grow to a size that's nice, that's good for the, anyway, that's where I land. But I very much respect the call for native species replacement and understand where that's coming from. So.
Yeah, I agree with the deputy mayor. Actually, I would lean more towards a list of trees that don't count towards replacement rather than only a list of native trees that are acceptable. Personally.
Councilman Marshall briefly asking to weigh back in. Thank you. And yeah, maybe a compromise could be something like strong preference for native trees or thereabouts. But I, just still wanted to put down my militance for native species and safeguarding. I hope this isn't an urban forest, even though technically, of course, we live in the city. I hope it's still something of a natural forest. And I want it to be. I want it to be native. I think it should be. Thanks.
So staff, are there some specific things that we need to talk through quickly now? Specific items?
I don't know if it would be quick, but the tree fund, it sounds like more information that people are interested in us coming back to talk about that. Okay, I'm seeing heads nod. Okay, that's good. That's what I had. So I feel like I can go over my notes with Garrett and with Brian and other staff, and then we can come back to have an additional discussion. Garrett, are you okay with that, or did you have other questions? Okay.
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. So no, I think I'm okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments before we move on? I'm not saying any. So thank you so much for your time tonight in the presentation. Very helpful. Next up, we've got staff report, summer events update presented by volunteer and events coordinator Stephanie Brown.
Stand by, she's on her way.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm Stephanie Brown. I'm the volunteer and events supervisor. I will be giving an update about summer events. So let me pull this up here. Okay. So we're excited for the return of events this summer in Kenmore. The first event of the summer is this Saturday at 6:30 in Town Square and Northeast 181st Street. In celebration of Bike Everywhere Month, we will have free bike activities, bike decorating stations, bike rodeo, vendors, giveaways, and a bike parade. And then we'll be showing the documentary Motherload in Town Square. We are celebrating the 20th year of the summer concert series. The concerts will be held at St. Edward's State Park Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. in July. A new addition that we're excited about to offer for the community this year is the first ever beer garden, which will be hosted by the Lodge at St. Edward and Stoop Brewing. As part of the concert series, we will be doing a kids concert on August 4th at Town Square. Due to the uncertainty of Log Boom Waterfront Access project completion date, we will not have a fireworks show on 4th of July this year. We will have a 20-minute 4th of July, or excuse me, we will have a 20-minute fireworks show on August 11th at 9:30 p.m. This will be part of the West Sammamish River Bridge opening celebration. The celebration event starts with a ribbon cutting at 6 p.m., then speeches on the bridge by government officials. The save the date has been shared with the community in the most recent quarterly newsletter, city website, and social media. For entertainment during the event, there will be a band, free family-friendly activities, food, free food, and the 20-minute fireworks show. The third annual Flyaway 5K with the Bothell Kenmore Chamber is on Saturday, September 24th. There has been some questions about Play Day, an event that we've had in the past. The nonprofit organization Step It Up Camp expressed interest to city staff in 2021 to host Play Day moving forward. Rita Moreno and myself are working with the organization to support them in this transition. And then, of course, the farmers market. Starting June 1st, Wednesday evenings in downtown Kenmore will be a lively scene as local vendors and shoppers gather for the new pilot farmers market. The farmers market will run June to August, Wednesday evenings from 3 to 7 p.m. We currently have 21 vendors, which includes farmers, bakers, flour vendors, prepared foods, processors such as honey, kombucha, coffee, and more. We have formed a farmers market volunteer committee to receive resident input and involvement in the planning and production of the market. And we are also still processing some additional vendor applications. Thanks for your time this evening, and I hope to see you all at the summer events.
I know we're looking forward to them. Do we have any questions or comments? No, I know that we're really excited to get back to having summer events again, so thank you so much. And then I understand, is that a hand, Councilor File? Okay.
is. I was just going to say, I want to thank you for all this beautiful, exciting work. I can't wait to start regathering with our community again. And I hope in the future that one day we will see Kenmore Pride be part of the summer planning instead of it being only a community-led co-sponsored event. It would be an amazing amount of growth for the city of Kenmore. Thank you.
All right. I understand that our city clerk may want to give us a quick update on our move to hybrid meetings. Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
yes, please, if you're interested, which I hope you are. Here's this. Here's the skinny. Last time we spoke, we understood that due to Governor Inslee rescinding the emergency proclamation, specifically pertaining to the method and mode in which we conduct our meetings, we need to get back to in-person or hybrid mode starting June 1. And we talked a little bit about what that could look like. We discussed the fact that a realistic hybrid setup would include additional staff because it takes 2 people to run a hybrid meeting because you have a concurrent Zoom webinar and a physical meeting in the space in the council chambers. And the council requested that we come back with some figures of what this could look like in terms of resources and staffing, and we are working on that. The other thing we did last week is we conducted our first formal mock meeting, and we thought it was successful. We thought that the people in the webinar, along with the people on site, had a similar experience and that they could be heard and be seen, and that the presentations could be heard and seen. Obviously, when you're juggling 2 systems like that, there's a little bit of lag, just like we have here with promoting and demoting and just technology. And so it's going to be a game of patience moving forward. But it looks like the system and the enhancements that we've put in are functioning. So here's step 2. Step 2 is to conduct a formal mock meeting and invite some of you to join us. The mock meeting is scheduled for this Friday. It's a bit of a strange time slot, but we had to make the schedule work specifically for our on-site tech representative from Diversified. And so here's my request. What I would like to see if possible is 3 council people participating, 2 council people, if possible, on site in person at the council dais, and 1 person in the webinar virtually as a council member. If that cannot be accommodated and only 1 person can be on site, that's fine. But I think I really would prefer to have a council person have a real experience of what it would feel like to sit at the council dais in a hybrid format. I don't know if you have your calendars in front of you, if that's a possibility, but I'd really like to know who to invite this Friday. Is there anyone?
I don't think you mentioned a time.
Well, that's a problem. That's a problem, isn't it? It's scheduled for 11 o'clock, and I'm thinking we have it from 11 to 1, but reasonably it'll be closer to 11 to noon.
Councilmember Baker and then Councilmember File.
I was just saying that I will be available.
Okay. Councilmember File.
Same, I can be available in person that Friday at that time.
And Councilmember Baker, checking in with you, are you saying you're available to be face-to-face?
No, I'd rather it be remote.
Okay, good to know. Is there anybody else that can do either remote or face-to-face?
Fortunately, my day job has claimed me in that time slot.
I can understand that. Okay, well, I will take whoever I can get. So I will.
Councilman Marshall here. If it's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Pencil me in as tentative in person. I could do it tentative in person.
Okay, very good. Tentative for Councilmember Marshall. In addition to having you there, we will have staff there, and we'd like to invite Planning Commission Chairman Dwight Thompson, along with Chairman Vanderlyn, to join us as well. Obviously, the Planning Commission is just as curious as we are. That'll be the plan, and whoever does attend, we're going to run it like a formal meeting. There's not going to be troubleshooting or logistics. We're going to have an agenda. We're going to live stream it. We're going to record it. And then those of you that can't join, you'll be able to view it in real time on YouTube or right after. And then we'll report on that on the 23rd. Questions?
Good.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Any further staff reports?
No, nothing else to report. Thank you.
Okay. Council comments and reports. I'll start from where I see people. Councilmember Baker.
Nothing to report at this time.
Councilmember Kugler.
I wondered if I need to make a motion to talk about whether coffee with council will move back to in-person as well. Do I need to move for that to come back to a future meeting, or can we discuss that tonight?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we need to. I think that's a discussion item that we should have at some point. Is there interest in adding that to a future agenda under council comment, maybe next meeting? Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
We're not pushing 10 o'clock.
Okay, nothing else to report. Thank you.
Councilmember Fowl.
Thank you. It's just been a really busy week. I had a couple speaking engagements. I have a tour later this week at HopeLink, not HopeLink, at the Mary's Place shelter. I did do a tour of the HopeLink shelter a couple weeks ago, and that was amazing. I did a fine meeting with community partners for Pride planning for the weekend. That was highly attended and well diverse, and I look forward to next steps. So that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
I'm wishing our city manager speedy recovery, and thanks everybody for bearing with me on the technical issues here. Hopefully when we're all back, these will be behind us. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Well, I've got a couple things. Last week, I presented along with Ms. Lukash at a Affordable Housing Week presentation about North King County. We were there. Folks from Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, and Bothell were also there, I believe. Nusha was hosting. It was a great conversation. I think folks were impressed by the work that we've done and the work that we're doing around affordable housing. And I thought it went really well. What else? I've heard through the grapevine that it is Dawn's birthday today. Happy birthday to our city attorney. We will not subject her to all of us singing happy birthday.
Oh, yes, we
off
should.
Cadence from each other. It would be a disaster.
Oh, that's the point. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear city attorney. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. That's really nice. I love birthday songs. So thank you so much.
Happy birthday, Dawn.
Happy birthday beyond a reasonable doubt. Happy birthday beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank you.
You say you love birthday songs. My family has a tradition of singing one that ends with that has the lyrics "sorrow, misery everywhere, people dying in despair" or something. Is one of the yeah. It's a dirge. I'm not sure who started it or where it came from or why we did it, but anyway.
All right.
I will spare you that one. The other thing. Thank you for coming to work on your birthday. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I wanted to just make sure the public was aware of is that Ms. Lukash here has been serving as our assistant city manager and ARPA administrator and has just been selected and started today, I believe, as our new permanent assistant city manager. There was an open application process, and our city manager, Rob Carlindsey, named her the new assistant city manager. So congratulations, Ms. Lukash. We're excited to have you here and to keep you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, if there's nothing further to come before us, the Kenmore City Council stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good job.
Congratulations.